on top of everything, it's been interesting to watch as this Russia-Ukraine thing has unfolded, because it's pushed Russia into this position where they've even talked about, maybe trading energy and gold. There's a lot of interesting dynamics. So what do you mean by currency regime change? And when you say a lot of it is unfolding right now, that has also unfolded throughout these previous 4,800 times you refer to as fiat currencies are reset or changed. What are some of those things occurring right now? How do you make sense of all this?
Well, for one thing, and I know that it's a little challenging for people to realize this, but we're all experiencing a huge amount of inflation right now, although that it's going to get worse. There's not one doubt in my mind. I can't guarantee this, but, I'm pretty darn sure that we are at the beginning of a hyperinflationary event. And the only difference between inflation and hyperinflation is the speed of that inflation. The problem is that there's virtually no purchasing power left in the US dollar. Now, and people go, oh, you're crazy. I still use that when I go to the store and I buy stuff online, etc. But if you go on the Federal Reserve's website, the FRED, F-R-E-D, and in the search bar, you put in purchasing power of the consumer dollar, what you'll see is that there's officially 3 cents left out of the original dollar's worth of purchasing power, which means it's worse than that. And all of this inflation that we're experiencing, we are losing rapidly whatever little bit of purchasing power is left. And so the bottom line to all of that is that we are at the end phase, the end of this fiat, this government debt-based money. And that is one of the patterns is very high inflation. Like your viewers may have seen on, the talking heads on CNBC or read in the paper that it's like the 70s or it's like the 80s, and they'll go back, wow, this hasn't happened since 1974. Well, we were shifting at that point from a gold-based currency into a debt-based currency. One of the other repeatable patterns is the war. So if you'd been watching my work, I've been saying that because wars always accompany these currency regime shifts, because now you're looking over here and then the war can justify this huge spike in that inflation. We also have civil rights movements. The oil back in the 70s, it was the oil embargo. You indicated that Russia was talking about selling their oil for gold, but they're also talking about selling not just their oil, but possibly all of their largest exports in rubles. So creating like a petrogas ruble, right? Which is what the US did with the petrodollar back in the 70s when we were losing our status as the world reserve currency. So there are what the world has now seen the US do to Russia and the allies as well is cut them out of the global system. So any of the wealth, any of the assets that the government or a lot of the oligarchs in Russia held outside of Russia, they don't have access to it anymore. Because here's a simple fact. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. But everybody's watching that. So that's on a global government scale. But didn't Canada just do the same thing to their citizens that were protesting and they didn't like it? So boom, they just cut them out of the system just like that. And they're still not back into the system. And that was 5-6 weeks ago? It proves that you better have resources, real money, that is in your possession if you want to weather this financial storm that we're in, because it's not going to be so easy. And some of your viewers may have already noticed that there are greater limitations put on your access to your funds. Maybe you haven't noticed that yet, but go and try and wire over $10,000 or $100,000 or whatever it is. Go and try and take cash out. You're going to discover that it's not really your money. They're going to say, what do you want this for? Why is it your business? It's their business because it's their money. When you make that deposit, you give them that. You loan them that money. So don't find this stuff out too late when you're locked out of the system and you can't access your wealth. Prepare now. Get ready now if you haven't already done so.